Aslı. I am very happy to be joined on stage by Barbaros, who's the co-founder of Iyzico. Now with Iyzico, there are many things we can talk to Barbaros about. We can talk about the future of financial technology. We can talk about expanding into Iran because they did that and Iran is such a hot market. We can talk about how they're building an amazing culture where they're able to hire the best and brightest of Turkey, but we're not going to talk about any of them. We're going to talk about funding because Iyzico in mid-January announced a $13 million round from Vostok Emerging Markets Fund based in Europe. And this was an interesting journey for you, and we want to talk about it and unpack it a little bit. You already know there's a happy ending, so the round did close, but to get there was no easy task. In fact, the informal title of our talk is raising money during a coup. So let's see how the drama unfolded. But Barbaros, can you talk just a little bit about Iyzico before we go into the details of the funding journey?
Sure. Iyzico is the easiest and fastest way accepting payments online in Turkey. So we started the company back in 2013. And almost 4 years later, we're actually serving 10,000 merchants and around 200,000 marketplace sellers with payment services in Turkey. Our team grew to 80 people who started the company with my co-founder. So within the last 4 years, we grew the team to 80 people. And actually, we're processing over 1.5 billion in Turkish lira in transaction volume.
Amazing. So before coming to Turkey, you were in Germany, and you were working at Klarna, which is a payment processing company. And when you decided to found Iyzico, you went through your first round, an angel round, and then you went through your first VC round in Turkey, which was with 212 Ventures. Then you went through your second VC round with IFC, and Endeavor Catalyst also joined, and your fourth and final round with Vostok. When you look at the cycle, what do you see? Like, what did you learn at each stage? What was surprising to you going from one round to the next?
I think we started back, I was born and raised in Germany, so I was working for a company called First Data, which is the global market leader in credit card processing. And one guy who was the international president of this, Stefan Klestil, he was the first contact point as we came up with the very silly idea to move to Turkey and found a payment company here. So I called him up and said, okay, Mr. Klestil, we have this idea and we want to build a payment company in Turkey, so it would be great to get your feedback on it. So he was very cool, so he invited me to Vienna, so I was visiting him there. I pitched him the idea, so we had nothing, so it was only a presentation of 6 slides. And then he was really motivated, so he said, come 2 weeks later again, and I will invite a couple of friends. So 2 weeks later, I was in Vienna. I was pitching the idea, and we had $1 million in funding as a commitment there. So this was very easy. Then at that point, I said, guy, it's not so difficult to raise money. So if it's as easy as that, it's really cool. But then, of course, this was the investment, what they did on the markets, also on the backgrounds, what we built with Tahsin, where we had the experience out of together 25 years in payments. So then, of course, every round gets much tougher to raise because then it's not only the idea or the presentation what you did, so you have to deliver. So you have to show the track record. You have to be showing them that you are able to hire great people, building a team, and then also deliver the forecast and also the budget what you present them.
Mm-hmm. So apart from being a great executor, which you guys are, as you go to more sophisticated funding rounds, the deals get more complicated. There are more lawyers involved. There's, the money doesn't get wired in one sitting. There's tranches. There's performance. How did you educate yourself? How were you confident enough to sit at the other end of the table and sort of negotiate with the bigger guys as the funding rounds got more sophisticated?
Yeah, I think we were very lucky in that point that we had very cool and really good business angels in place. Because these guys, the first guys, were raised the first money. They helped us also in the next round. So they supported us to get in touch with other VCs, but also with institutions like IFC. And at the same time, I think they gave us the very important advice to not saving money on the lawyers. So you have to find the right lawyers in this kind of round, so you can definitely get the right advice on that. But of course, you have to also educate yourself, because you can't only rely on your lawyers. So you have to understand what's a liquidation preference, which is a tag along, and all of these terms. You have to educate yourself and get deep into the detail to understand what this means for you, for your co-founder, but also for the company.
So you can't outsource that.
No, definitely not.
You have to understand.
You have to deal with it.
Well, as a side question, between you and Tahsin, were one of you more focused on fundraising while one of you was more focused on operations at this time?
Sure. I think that's also a second lucky point that Tahsin and I think we are very similar in somehow, but we're also very different in the other ways. So he's more focusing on the internal, on the product, and on the technology side. So I was more the guy who was talking to investors and building the strategy and also the business know-how on it.
So let's get to your fourth round. It was February of 2016, right, when you all decided that you were going to raise a big round this time, upwards of $10 million. Not very frequently done in Turkey, especially not in the financial services sector. You knew that you would have to do this from a foreign investor, because not many people in Turkey were able to write that big of a check. And you started your process in February of 2016. Coincidentally, this past year was also probably the most tumultuous year in recent Turkish history. So when you started that, from February, I think you sort of made the decision, and then by April, you had hired your advisor and started going on the road. What was the process like? What was surprising to you before the July drama came? But in the first couple months, what kind of a reaction did you get from the investors?
I think it was very important that we did the 2 months pre-work before we started with the fundraising, because we knew that this round will be critical, because there was not so many companies in Turkey who raised rounds around 15 to 20 million. So we had to do a lot of pre-work. We had to also analyze and target the right VCs, because this was also very important. So we have to decide first what's our journey, what's our plans, and then definitely define the right target group of VCs, what we want to approach. So for our case, there were 3 criteria where we said it will be very important, which helped out at the end of the day that we did it right. So first of all, we said we want to approach VCs who are interested in the market and in the region. So this is very important. So that we don't have to tell them every week everything is okay here, so you don't have to worry. So this was the first point. The second point was that we said, okay, there must be a VC who knows the fintech area, the payments area, so who understands the dynamics there. And third, we have big ambitions, so we said we want to deal with a VC or with an investor who has at least $1 billion company in their portfolio. So that was the 3 criteria what we said at the beginning. And then the second, I think, very important decision was, okay, do we have to do the whole fundraising process by our own, or should we work with a financial advisor? And we decided to work with a financial advisor, which was also the right decision, if we're looking back. And then with all this pre-work, with the business plan, and also with the story building, then we started in April to approach the VCs. And then we had some roadshows. We were going to Europe, to US, and talking to different companies, investors. And at the end of the day, it's a funnel management, right? You have the first interests, and then you push them through the pipeline to get the deal done.
Just to clarify how you use an advisor in this process, because any VC, I think, here will say, we invest in the team. It's very important to get to know the people really well. So the advisor was never really in the forefront of anything, right? So can you talk a little bit about sort of what their function was in the whole picture?
Where we used the financial advisor was more to running the process. So the approaching the investors, selling the story, and also talking and delivering the management story to the investor was our job. So we were in the front and selling the idea. But then once we get them interested, then the financial advisor was in place and pushing them through the process and helped us a lot to deliver the different also requirements what the investors has.
And in fact, there's a story about how there was an investor where the financial advisor emailed, right? And the investor wrote back very explicitly saying, "Hi, Barbaros."
Absolutely. So that at the beginning, of course, there are some VCs who don't like that at all. So the financial advisor was sending emails, and he was always answering to me, which was a clear sign that he don't like it. But after we closed the round, it was also very obvious that all the investors who were involved in this deal were very happy that we had the financial advisor in place, because they make stuff also very, very easy for everyone. And so we were able also to close the round, so sign the contracts within 4 to 5 months, which is really awesome if we're looking what happens during this phase.
But I think it's awesome in any case, raising a 13 million round in 4.5 months. But so April, May, June rolled around, you're going on roadshows, you're getting some interest. You're also expecting a very important announcement from the regulator regarding a license. So what happened at Iyzico on the morning of July 15th?
15th of July was, I think, was the toughest day in my life. Because at the early hours on that day, we received our payment institution license, which
you had been waiting for
2 years.
How many? 2 years.
And I think this was also one of the major risk points in our fundraising process, because all of the VCs, of course, asked what will happen if you guys don't get the license. So this was really cool, because then we said, okay, now the biggest risk factor is out of the round. And then at that day, I think we received around 5 term sheets.
So you're cutting a cake, you're letting all the potential investors know we finally have our license, they're getting back to you.
And then
8 p.m. on July 15th, you have 5 term sheets.
Absolutely.
Probably maybe one of the biggest turning points in Iyzico's history to date, right? Like to get this license, you're on your way to raising this round. And of course, everybody knows that night we had the attempted coup, and it was a turning point for all of us. And I was telling Barbaros on Monday, I took my 2 kids and went to Bodrum because it was too stressful and I needed a vacation. But Barbaros went to work. And what happened?
I think during the weekend, it was, of course, first of all, you have to take care about your family. So this is what I did on the weekend. And then, of course, I received the first calls from investors, so I had to deal with that on the weekend.
What was the range of the reactions?
The range of reactions was first, okay, guys, the term sheet what we sent you today, we keep it on hold, so we will talk about it somewhere later, because the risk factor changed. This was the one extreme part, and the other part was, of course, that investors called me and said, okay, Guy, we invested in Pakistan, we invested in Egypt, so this is not an issue for us, so we're still keeping there. And there were also really cool investors who definitely said that they will not invest or it will be tough, but they called me on Sunday and said, okay, this is shit what happened there, but please don't give up and be persistent, and this will work out.
So as a CEO of a high growth company, you have all this amazing young workforce. You're in the middle of raising the biggest round, of the company's life. How do you handle that? Like when you go to the office on Monday, what was your message to the team, and how were you able to sort of keep them motivated for the next couple months when maybe everything was a little ambiguous?
Sure. I think there was a lot of question marks in the room because, of course, fundraising was the one issue, but on the other hand, there were, at that time, I think we're around 55 people. They were sitting in the room, and then I thought that they expect that I have to tell something. And that was also my impression, that I have to tell something which makes everything okay again. But this was definitely not the case. But what we said at that day is that there are stuff which is not under our control. So we were not able to control these things. So what we can do is that we keep the culture in this room, that we keep the happiness in the office, so that we at least can make an impact on this, what we have under the control, and then focus on the work, because everything else is something what's out of our control. So this was a kind of the message what was there. But I was also very impressed, to be honest, because I'm born and raised in Germany, so if this something similar would happen in Germany, I think these guys would not go out of the house after 6 months. In Turkey, everything went back to normal very quick. And this was also very important, that the people came to work, that we focused on again to make our customers happy, to have the feeling that, okay, it's not as worse as we thought.
So the 5 term sheets went down to?
2.
2. What happened to the valuation?
It dropped a lot.
Dropped a lot?
Yeah.
And nothing had changed with the company, of course. Everything from the externalities and things beyond your control, but you kept going, and this was also probably sort of a very tough way to do sort of a check on your potential investors, right? Who would stand by you in the tough times and who would maybe walk away when the first toughness came around.
Absolutely.
And so how did you end up with Vostok? What was their reaction through this thing, and how did you realize that that was a relationship that was going to last a long time?
I think some feedback also to the VCs in the round. I think what Vostok did really great was that they were very honest. So that they definitely very clearly stated that this will change the situation, and he has to bring it back to his investment committee and discuss it again. And he will give me feedback on the next week. And then he called me next week, and he said, okay, he still wants to do the deal, but he has to make the adjustments on the valuation and this kind of things. So he was very, very honest, and he was very delivered everything what he said during the week. And there was other investors who didn't pick up the phone or did anything on that. So I'm very honest, if one of the other investors would come back and give me 20% higher valuation, I would still take the VC who standed and were very fair in this process to us.
And the 3 that were put on hold or backed out, 2 of them came back later, actually,
That's
right?
True. Yeah.
So they're after a couple of weeks, months, the team went back to 4 term sheets, but the process, of course, was, I'm sure, as a personal level, the roller coaster and the highs and lows must have been grueling for you as well.
Sure.
So that said, and we don't have much time yet left, what's your advice to all these people, and half of them probably are thinking about raising money right now? What were the key learnings, and what's your best practice and advice for them?
I think key learnings, especially for follow-up rounds, is start fundraising very early. So not when you needed money, but where you definitely see the growth and where everything is very, very positive. So that's the best time to raise money.
Yeah, so you started in February, but you still had money in the bag to last almost another 9-10 months, right?
Yes, of course. I think this is one very important point, not getting desperate. And the second advice is, I think it's really cool to get money from circular capital, but we have to be also very, very realistic that these guys will not invest in your company, most probably. So therefore, analyze, make the pre-work, and get the right target group on the VCs, which are interested in your region, in your country, but also in your vertical. I think this is very, very important. And third, I think it's very important also that figures are very great, but you have to build a story around your company and around your fundraising. This helps a lot also to get the people and the VCs all excited.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, all the VCs that you ended up having a closer relationship with, almost none of them were cold calls, right? You had to find a warm introduction from somewhere.
Absolutely.
Either from your existing investors or people like Endeavor or other partners, and you went to them with sort of that warm introduction, right?
Absolutely. That's also a very important point. Never cold call if you want to raise money. So find someone who can make a very warm introduction and go over them. Most probably the best thing is talking to other founders where the company, the VC is invested in, and try to get the introduction over him. That's the best case.
Great. Are you already planning your next round, or are you taking a break from fundraising?
No fundraising for now. Now focusing on to grow the business and make Iyzico to one of the first unicorns out of Turkey.
Great, and we're very excited to be following your journey. Thank you very much. You make us proud. Thank you, Barbaros. I think a round of applause.